channel. The earliest would be June of this year. We're proposing the installation of topsoil in August to September, and then planting beginning the earliest of September, and that process will probably take us through November of this year. We have discussed, or at least staff has discussed with Mike, our ability to remove materials from the site, which I understand is a sore point with the planning board. We are going to need to process about 5,000 cubic yards of material, 500 of which will be used for the restoration, and we have 4,500 cubic yards that we otherwise would remove from the site. And what we're proposing, if that's something that the board will entertain, is to wait until we have our plantings in place before seeking authorization to remove that additional rock off of the site. Ty and Bond has proposed monitoring, and we support that. In fact, our plans address monitoring. And I do have some more detail with respect to the frequency of monitoring. In connection with our NIPD's permit, we're going to be required to do monthly monitoring as well as monitoring after major storms, beginning in April when we're mobilizing on the site, and thereafter proposing monthly monitoring after the completion of the plantings. We're required to ensure that the plantings take for a minimum of 2 growing seasons, a requirement under the Wetlands Protection Act. So that will be 2 full springs and summers, and we agree with the recommendations of Ty and Bond with respect to monitoring and reporting of those conditions. Ty and Bond has requested, performance bond and additional security to secure the work, and Milford Stone has agreed to that. I should just note that the calculation of the performance bond relates to the alteration of the entire site, I believe. Milford Stone is responsible for the alteration of the wetland area, approximately 5.7 acres. But again, because we desire to start and complete this work as soon as possible, they're prepared to provide you with the $20,000 cash bond, as well as a $133,600 performance bond as recommended by Ty and Bond. Ty and Bond also requested that we secure a DPW stormwater permit, which was a new item that no one had mentioned to us previously. And I do have a question either for Mr. Robbins or for the board. This work is being performed under an enforcement order under the Wetlands Protection Act. And I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that under your stormwater bylaw, if you're doing work under, for example, the subdivision approval, the Wetlands Protection Act, and order of conditions, that I believe that stormwater is reviewed in connection with those projects, and only if you don't have those other approvals in place do you require a local stormwater permit. Again, we'll be guided by Mr. Robbins and the board whether you additionally want us to get a stormwater permit. Ty and Bond has actually reviewed our project for compliance with the Massachusetts stormwater standards already. I don't know if there would be any additional requirements. If it's a question of simply filling out a form and paying a fee, we're more than happy to do that. I don't think that was the intention of your bylaw, but again, I don't have familiarity with how you're applying your local stormwater bylaw. So I'll defer to Mr. Robbins.
So I'm sorry, through the chairman.
Go ahead.
You're correct in what you said, that we don't have the same standards in the earth moving permit that we do in the subdivision rules and regs. However, the earth moving permit does mention hydrology studies and drainage studies. If the recommendation by our consultant is that we have a security bond to secure the stabilization of the site and the completion of the restoration, then I think the board should follow their recommendation. Clearly, this is a site that has a lot of history, and this work that we're trying to remediate is one of a long litany of examples that have had problems on that site. I think it would be wise for us to take a bond to secure this work.
Yeah, I don't think that's the open question, though. The question is whether they need stormwater permit, or if because it's an order of enforcement.
Oh, he actually had two questions. You're right. That's another question. I would defer to Lisa on this, but it would be my recommendation that they do have a stormwater permit.
Yes, the stormwater permit will be required. It is mostly just a form. You'll have to provide, and you may have already done this, provide a SWIP for your work, which is generally required in any kind of construction
Correct.
project. And we'll be looking for an O&M.
Can I just ask to make sure Kristen can hear all that?
You hear that, Kristen?
You got
You
it.
got that? So you got the O&M, that's the operation maintenance plan. Okay.
Thank you. And the project does require a SWIP. We're required under federal law to have that in place. So again, thank you for the clarification. It doesn't sound like it's heavy lifting. I believe we have all of that information already in the record, and we're happy, again, to go along.
Is that stormwater permit going to slow down the process at all, or is it just a matter of DPW collecting the form and?
You can fast track it, and it doesn't have to go through time bond. We can do it.
Okay, I just would obviously like to get them started so that they can get this done before weather conflicts in the fall.
Thank you. Ty and Bond also that recommended that we provide our reporting documents to the DPW. We have no issues whatsoever with respect to that. And Ty and Bond also confirmed the opinion that we need a waiver relating to seasonal groundwater separation. You may recall that there's a odd provision in the bylaw that does not allow you to essentially dig below, I believe it's elevation 10, in order to maintain separation. But because we're restoring a wetland, we actually have to put the bottom of this into the groundwater. So we're going to need a waiver for that. And the Conservation Commission had identified that issue and had essentially recommended that.
Yeah, and the Conservation, again, sorry to interrupt you, the Conservation Commission will actually recommend a level of coverage. So I'd recommend that the planning board track whatever it is they recommend.
Thank you. Ty and Bond also spoke to, you may recall that there's an existing roadway up a slope that leads off to the neighboring property. And they proposed a condition that there be no further work on the site without the approval of the town. I just want to make sure that, I think the intention was to prevent, further development of that road. As a practical matter, we're proposing to put boulders across that road, and we're not going to be able to use it in any event. We just want to make sure that if there's a special condition, that special condition relates to the area and work that Milford Stone is responsible for, the restoration area, and that restriction not affect the other portions of the site. And again, we recognize that there's a long-standing history here. We've done our best to just focus in on what Milford Stone is responsible for. The town will have to pursue its other avenues to address those other issues. That's not part of our hunt, but we just want to make sure that whatever we do and whatever conditions are issued here, that we're not doing anything to impair those other operations for which we're not responsible. So we agree that that roadway will be cut off and nothing can be used, nothing can be done in that particular area of the site. It's just the language that Ty and Bond employed was a little bit broader. The Ty and Bond also recommended two things which we discussed in the field, which are again not really Milford Stone issues, but we've spoken to the wards. One is that there's a stockpile that is, creates smells, odors that we were asked to, or the wards were asked to relocate, and they're willing to do that. And also there was a request to replant the buffer zone between the ward's property and I believe it's the park that had been taken down. We don't know whether that's technically feasible because of the elevation changes. And so I just, that's something that perhaps Mr. Robbins or the conservation agent can speak more to. I think there may be a technical problem with planting trees in that area because of the steep elevation change, so I don't know what's feasible there. I mean, to the extent that we have any, we're not responsible for it, but I believe that there's some openness to do something in that area. Again, that's somewhat, I shouldn't say somewhat, it is actually unrelated to the restoration work, but again, we're trying to bridge a gap between the town and the property owners, and we're happy to do that. So we know that the wards are willing to move that stockpile. I'm not sure that there's any ability to replant that buffer given the topography as it presently exists.
Will that be addressed at all by the Conservation Commission?
I don't know.
Okay, I want to talk to them.
I can't tell you whether that's actually within their jurisdiction. Again, it's at the rear of the
It's not, Jim, it was actually my request.
Oh, okay.
Conservation. But we actually have had a meeting since then, and at least I got the impression that they were willing to try to put something up if they can.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's a fair, just what that something is and how much we can do to make a as a, it's not really going to be much meaningful.
Back a forest, obviously, but I think the resident would appreciate, just something, some foliage,
So just as a little bit of history, there was a lot of clear cutting on Boston Hill many years ago when a previous landowner owned that property. The planning board made them file for an earth moving and clearing permit. In this case, it was cutting trees. It wasn't moving stone and earth. The board required them to replant that slope. So it would not be unusual for the board to request that, or require that, I should say. But what I did, there are a lot of issues here. I appreciate, please continue, but what I would like to do is to have a work session with Mike Scott, and Lisa, Fred, myself, and your team. And that work session be offline, and then come back to the board to report the results of that.
No, thank you. That makes perfect sense. I'm happy to stop here. We just have a couple of quick notes, if you would not mind. There's an intermittent stream on site, and there was a recommendation that we not allow any equipment over the intermittent stream. The only problem is that you actually need to get our equipment over the intermittent stream to do the restoration. So once the restoration is completed, there's certainly a condition that say that there will be no alteration to the intermittent stream makes perfect sense. But we're going to need to get across that stream in order to do the work.
So you would plate the stream or build a temporary bridge or something over the stream?
Correct. And again, just lastly, there were numerous comments about supplemental notes to the plans. We're more than happy to make those changes, and as indicated, to provide a copy of the final SWIP to the town in connection with our federal filing. So hopefully we've demonstrated that we're continuing to working with the town to address any of the outstanding issues by tie and bond. I'm happy to answer any questions, although I'm probably not qualified to answer them, but I'll do my very best if you have any. But I think we're well on our way to resolving this so that we can begin the work shortly.
All right, any questions?
My question actually is to Jim. Will the bond cover any and all monitoring? Because you've talked about monitoring this a couple of years down the road, and I just want to make sure there's enough money available.
So when you say covering this long-term or for monitoring, the bond would be intended to secure the restoration work and the stabilization of the site. I think that the board would need to discuss with the applicant what the long-term monitoring means. I mean, maybe they pay for a consultant to monitor the site, like Tie and Bond or someone else, to monitor the site once a year or twice a year for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I'm particularly concerned about that, and I want to make sure that that is done, because I think with the history of this site, it's very important. And so I just wanted to make sure that someone was going to pay for it, whether it was the bond that, whether we can hold.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that. At the next meeting, we'll discuss that.
Yeah, okay.
So we have agreed to have both a project engineer and a professional wetland scientist do the monitoring. The professional engineer will monitor the construction, and the wetland scientist will monitor the planting, and then will be required, again, on a monthly basis, to provide reports as to the health of the plantings, and that is all addressed in the plan notes as we speak. To the extent that the board wants to add additional requirements, we're happy to entertain that, but we did address all of that in connection with the planning, and we plan on paying for all of that work.
Yeah, no, I was aware of that, but I'm more concerned about 18 months and 2 years down the road at this point, that there is some monitoring done and some reporting just to make sure that things are moving the way they were supposed to move. And my question obviously then is who's going to pay for that? And we need some agreement or something in the issuance of our final decision on how that's going to move forward.
Yes, again, we are going to be obligated by the Conservation Commission to monitor for 2 full growing seasons, essentially 2.5 years, at the end of which I'm fairly certain that the Conservation Commission is going to require that we provide a final report in order to assure the Conservation Commission that we've complied with their instructions vis-a-vis the enforcement order. We're happy to report to the Planning Board also, but that's going to be, I assume, a condition of the Planning Board approval of the revised restoration plan.
That was my question.
Okay. John? So I had I just looked at the elevations, and it looks like you've got some significant changes in elevation, but it does look back on the border of the park site, the apartment site, that you level out some. So I would hope that some restoration would be done there to give them some greener view than what it looks like they have now. I haven't been back there. I'm not sure I want to go back there. But
And again, yeah, my recollection is that the place where we were looking vis-a-vis the park was in a separate location on the site from the restoration area. I'll be corrected by the professionals in the room. So the actual alteration of the wetland is some distance from the park. Having said that, we've expressed some willingness to address that, even though it's outside of the area of work that we're now responsible for.
Mark, is that talking about the place where the concrete is and that kind of stuff, or are we have no control over that at this particular time?
well, Milford Stone isn't responsible, but the owner may be, right?
You're talking about the reprocessed materials. So there's macadam out there, concrete, there's compost, there's all kinds of materials out
Right.
there. And that's the responsibility of the Ward family. That's not Milford Stone's operation. That doesn't mean you can't try to get at that, but for the purposes of this earth-moving permit,
Who
it's the
made this application?
restoration work. I'm sorry?
Who made this application? I mean, who's the enforcement order on? Is it just Milford Stone, or is it on?
It's on the,
Property owner, right?
the trespass and the damaging to the wetlands. It's not regarding the reprocessed material that's being stored. I don't believe that this board, ever, at least not in my time, ever granted a permit to bring material to that site. So any further import or export of material from that site should be permitted by the planning board. But you have the zoning enforcement officer here. It would be good to hear what Fred thinks about this.
Yeah, before I go to Fred, I understand that your intention is to block that road. It looks like some of Milford Stone's activity went, I mean, again, I'm not sure, but it looks like it went onto the adjacent property. Like, who created that road?
That happened historically. That was not
You
part
haven't
of.
excavated
I
any?
haven't, actually, I'm sitting here and I have no knowledge of a park.
Well,
Oh, no, the-
Park is the apartments. That's the
Oh,
name.
the
Apartments,
apartments,
at the rear of the site.
It's
So
just
that-
called
that was-
Park. Westborough,
Yeah, that's,
That's before our.
Okay, so the road, because when I look at that road, that is a significant, that's like a 100-foot drop down Boston Hill that I'm concerned about erosion on. if there's not some restoration, but if you
So-
didn't create the road, then I wouldn't expect you to be responsible for that restoration.
So we are addressing that because some of the alteration of the wetland was at the toe of that slope. And so I believe that the proposed detention basin is going to be located, the temporary detention basin is going to be in that area. So we have a plan to manage that water during essentially the restoration. And then we're going to recreate the connection between the wetland on the, I think it's the north side of the road, and the new wetland on the south side. That's all going to be recreated. The point, I guess the request in the field was, well, just make sure you're not using that road. And I believe we agreed to put boulders across that to provide assurance. But that water has been addressed as part of our design because of that elevation change. But there was work at the toe of that slope to remove some of that material. And just, Chair Silver, just as a point of information, Milford Stone and the Wards are co-applicants for this permit because they are the property owners. We're a tenant of that land, but we were responsible for the restoration work, so that's why they're co-applicants.
Okay. I guess my other question, as far as restoration of foliage, I'm just looking along Westborough Village lot, because this lot goes all the way down to it's a really strange shaped lot. It goes all the way down to Gleason Street, and the southeastern borders along Westborough Village. Right. There's no wetlands restoration in that area?
No,
No.
no. If you enter the site, you go down the main road, you cross over this stream crossing, and when you get to the middle of the site, essentially to the left, to the west is where the wetlands are.
Where do you enter the site, though? Do you enter the site?
From Gleason Street.
Well, there's 3 frontages on Gleason Street.
Yep, from Gleason Street.
No, I mean, there's 3 frontages on Gleason Street. Which one do you go closest to Westborough Village? Do you go across another property?
I think the 2 entrances are driveways to residents, which is the Ward's aunt.
Yeah, it's Mr. Ward's sister.
Mr. Ward's sister, is it?
Correct.
And then Mr. Ward's, and then the one on the bottom.
Yeah.
One on the bottom would be the entrance to the pad to
I'd have to drive
that
out and look
property.
at it. But
The
I wouldn't-
driveway that's closest to Westborough Village is the entry to the,
Yeah, the one closest to Toll
project.
Brothers property.
Yeah, that's the entrance. So wouldn't some additional green, I mean, I didn't realize you guys didn't strip the land, but it just seems like these neighbors are looking at a quarry, and I'm not sure that's,
that's where the
What should-
reprocessed material has been stockpiled.
to be honest with you, that's why we have setbacks and zoning in general, right? Like, so that residential neighbors don't have to look at,
Those activities have nothing whatsoever to do with the wetlands violation and the restoration area. So I can appreciate your concerns, but those concerns have to be addressed to someone other than Brian and myself, because
Well, just historically, 2 years ago, I believe it was 2 years ago, when we came over and we purchased a lease on that piece of property. It's been longer than that, but we assisted the Wards. When you came on that property, you could see the Toll Brothers condos as clear as I can see you. Now you go in there, and there's, I think, the berm that we put there all the way down with the material that you had spoke about, they had brought on site. We put it to use to buffer the sound, the dust, and the visual of what was there, and put it into a berm. And at some point, someone had mentioned something about putting trees on top of that. So since then, I don't know if they've ever heard or had any complaints of that, but that's what we did to assist that frontage there, which wasn't part of ours, but helping them and assisting. I mean, it was needed, like you said, to be done.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to go outside our
Yes,
authority under the wetlands restoration order. I just would like to see some of the devastation.
Yeah, you want them to be good neighbors, understood. So the latitude of this earth-moving permit doesn't include that work, but that work has been going on probably in violation of our earth-moving bylaw for many years. That's why I asked that you ask Fred to speak about the site, because Fred has worked with Mr. Ward, if you can call it worked with him. He's approached Mr. Ward, let's put it that way. He has way more history than I do that's current on that site.
Okay. Fred, do you have any comments? Okay.
But it is outside the scope of the restoration period.
Yes, yes.
We're really dealing with.
Well, further than our community development director, it is and it isn't. So, one, I'm overly frustrated in this whole project, just to be clear. So I'm not going to mince words. Most of it's BS. What should happen, or what I would recommend to the board, because the enforcement issue will go on forever, is that you only allow them to do the restoration and don't take any material off the site, because you're talking about 4,500 cubic yards and now talking about taking off site. I'd recommend to the board, until this has been completely straightened out, that that does not happen, and that both the wards and this representative come in and work out an earth-moving permit for the whole site. We keep going back and forth on this, because they claim they have no responsibility for anything. They helped create this mess that's out there. If all the operations could possibly happen, but they should be covered under the earth moving, because we have no other permit out there, and they continue to disrupt earth out there, more than 20,000 square feet or 500 cubic yards, whichever way you want to look at it. So they already have 2 piles. They have like 6 miners out there, many yards of that, and processed gravel that's already been done, already been processed on site and sitting there. So I think you can allow the restoration to happen, but not have them take anything off the site until this whole thing's been worked out. That way the restoration can happen, but nothing else happens on that site, and you don't allow them to pull anything off the site until both the wards and they are here. Joe Shea, who I believe works with Milford.
What?
Joe Shea is also associated with Milford.
He's the owner.
He helped create that roadway you're talking about and strip the top part. So this mess will go on forever until it gets straightened out. That would be my recommendation.
Fred, are they technically in violation as far as the materials that they've?
Yes,
Brought
because
in.
they're disrupting more than 500 cubic yards at 20,000 square foot of area. And they've maintained that they're not subject to that. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. Again, I don't want to stop the restoration. I'm wholeheartedly believing that. I think the board should try to get that done, because we're already hearing that we might miss this whole summer and everything else, which again leads to my frustration. But I don't want to continue to do enforcement orders that have been happening for years and years and years out there, because that's what we're going to end up with. So if you allow them to take material off without straightening out this whole mess, then we'll continue to have this violation notice. I think you can do the restoration and just put a hold on everything else until we've gotten it completely straightened out. That's my opinion.
Fred, one
Sure.
one question. Fred, have you been fining them along the way?
No, we haven't done that to date because we've been trying to work with them.
Okay.
Response?
Sure. So first, I just want to assure the board that at no time has Milford Stone avoided responsibility for the alteration to the wetlands, but we've admitted responsibility and have not avoided that. So I just want to make sure that you understand that. At the same time, we're not responsible for the other historic activities out there, some of which I believe are grandfathered based upon the information provided to me by the wards. We're not going to get back into that. That's a much more complicated issue. And I just wanted to make clear to the board that we're not proposing to remove the material that we're processing in connection with the wetlands restoration until after we have planted the plants in conformance with the restoration plan. And That's what our proposal is. We're obviously, Milford Stone is in the business of processing stone, and so that was the, that is the ask. But as far as prohibiting the wards from doing anything out there, I can't speak to that. That's up to the town to pursue those things. But it is complicated, and it's a decades-old dispute that I'm led to believe resulted in litigation in the 1980s. And so that's all I really think I'm qualified to talk about.
So I understand that you're not willing, or you're not proposing to remove the stone until the wetland restoration is done. Are you proposing to apply for an earth-moving permit once that restoration is done?
Well, that's what this is part and parcel. This is an earth removal permit to perform the restoration work, and as part of that, we're asking for permission to remove the unused processed stone as part of that.
But Fred, you think they should do two separate processes?
I personally would recommend that we get the restoration done and then deal with a new earth-moving permit to holistically look at the whole lot. And that's part of the problem, is that they're trying to divorce themselves from the wards, but the wards are still, as I understand it, the owners of the property. This only came to light about the leasing the last time they were in front of the board, if you recall. This whole thing about leasing property from the wards, that didn't even come to light until the last planning board meeting. I think that's been delineated in the plans, but I don't even know that factually. So we seem to be continually mixing who owns what and who's responsible for what.
Yeah,
out there.
so you previously said that you created that berm.
Yes.
Did you get a permit for that?
No, they were already, when we came over to that property, they were already, as Fred knows, he can attest to that, they were already processing material, right? That material was already on site, right?
The wards have been processing material off and on for a million
Right.
years, but the berms that he refers to may be newer. I don't recall now, that they're right next to the Toll Brothers. But to your own point, you said you created those, so no, they didn't get a permit for that.
No, we didn't, the material was scattered in piles all over the property, over 8 acres? Is that 8 acres? It's like 8 acres. We cleaned up that area by putting it into a berm, and whatever else was left there that was not of soil that would grow,
Right.
grass and
But without a permit?
yes.
Again, Chair
For the
Silverberg,
woods.
again, there have been historic gravel and earth-moving operations out there for decades. I'd suggest that some of those are legitimate grandfather activities, some may not, but we're getting off topic. The point
Earth moving currently requires a permit, and
it does, sir, but unless the activity is grandfathered.
So you're asking us to allow earth moving as part of this enforcement order?
Correct, because this is a new activity. I had tried to convince the building inspector that we didn't need an earth moving permit. Ultimately, we agreed to submit this application in order to move the process forward to avoid a dispute with respect to the wetlands restoration. Again, if the board and the town wants to pursue the wards for other violations, they've always have the right to do that. We're just trying to complete the wetlands restoration in 2023.
Okay, but what I don't understand, right, if we pursue the wards for these other violations and we need that 4,500 cubic yards in order to restore the site, where's it going to be? Are you going to bring it back? I mean, again, I'm not familiar with the site well enough.
If the board wants us to keep the 4,500 cubic yards of processed material on the site, that's fine. Again, if that's ultimately your decision, we don't want this to be delayed any further. We really need to get this work done. So if you don't want that material to come off site, that's your decision.
So in other words, you could do the restoration of the wetlands and leave the material on the site until something is worked out on that aspect.
Yeah, the The idea was from the beginning, the only thing we were doing was taking the rock and crushing it to make the product. It's the same rock that you're saying not to move. I agree. That rock in that area, that particular area, can be crushed, put back in that area there. The rock that's north of that is not rock that came out of that area that was altered. I can't prove that one way or the other, so let's use the rock, what we need on site, and if you need the rock to stay there, we'll leave it there. And they can get a permit for after that restoration is done to move it if that's what need be. I just don't want to hold up the process of doing the restoration.
I don't want to hold up the process of doing the restoration. I just want to,
Yeah.
I just want some improvements. Fred, do you have a comment on that? I mean, if we leave the rock on site, does that allow the restoration to move forward?
So I don't know what it requires to do the restoration. There's already, I don't know they have to process any more material that's already been processed already.
Do we what?
If they
We
have
do.
to.
We need to remove, there's rock presently in the wetland area that has to be removed. That's correct.
On the south end of the property.
And
where
we
the
need to
restoration-
process that material to build the detention basins and do the work with the material on site. Unless you want us to bring additional material from offsite to do that, but that makes no sense.
But
right?
you said you needed 500 cubic yards of processed material, right? How much material is already processed? Do you have any idea? There's two piles of processed material.
I could not tell you. I just, and I could not tell you exactly based on, we just made the restoration larger by how much? We adjusted it twice. So, given that, but we need to crush what we need to crush to use it. And if it needs to be left on site, I'm absolutely fine with that.
Yeah, I think that would require a separate earth-moving permit.
Yeah.
This is, we're only allowing earth-moving for the restoration, not
Sure.
for you to take
I
material
don't want that to
off-site
delay
that
anything
came
that
from
we're
the
trying to
site.
do.
I mean, that doesn't make sense to me.
I agree. So I'm great with that. I think that you should only allow what needs to be processed on site to do the restoration period on that,
I agree with that.
including what's already been processed. Beyond that, if they'd like to come back to the board and work this whole thing out, I have no objections to that. I think that's what they should be doing. And the board should be in this conversation because it includes their processing. That's why they seem to keep trying to divorce those two operations, but I don't think they should be divorced long-term.
Okay, so I would say that the decision would not include that extra material, just leave that on site.
Yeah.
Other than that, what else? Oh, I mean, we've talked a lot about it, but do you feel like we have enough that we can move forward with the decision, or this?
I want to have that work session.
Okay.
And we want to see what the conservation,
Well, of course, we have to see what they come, because they're meeting tonight, yeah.
If I may, on that, talking to Jennifer Miller, the Conservation Director, she was hoping to have a decision tonight from the Conservation Commission. Obviously, Jim will be aware of it tomorrow, so for the working session, he can pass that information on to the board if they've made the approval tonight. And if they haven't, obviously you'll know it'll hold up the process further, but they're hoping not to do that.
All right, so I think we're going to continue this. Jim, if you feel capable after that work session to draft a decision.
I'll let the board know.
Okay.
Because like I said, I would like to have your project team, including Mike Scott, Fred, Lisa, and myself, and Jen from the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, do you need anybody from the board there?
It's up to you. I can't have more than 2 members, though.
I got to tell you, I got lost a little bit on all the stuff tonight, so if somebody more technical than me wants to be there, but otherwise I'll take your word on it. Anybody else want to be there? Okay.
This is an exciting
You
subject.
can tell I love the technical stuff. Sorry, guys. Anyway, let's look
Have
at
a motion.
continue. Well, it is, it is a public hearing, so does anybody from the public wish to address this? Seeing none, does somebody want to make a motion on this?
I move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the earth-moving special permit application at 25 Gleason Street until Tuesday, April 4, 2023 at 6:30 PM.
Second that motion.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's 5-0 in favor of continuance. We'll see you in April.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Next item on the agenda is preliminary subdivision plan for 48 Flanders Road, Waterman Design. Barry, when you're ready. Jim, do you have any intro remarks?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sent the board a draft decision. Barry has a copy of it, so does the town engineer. You all have copies, hard copies, in your package in front of you. This comes as a result of our many weeks of working on an alternative design for a new roadway to avoid the extreme cuts and slopes that they're going to have, which would necessitate a lot of retaining wall on the site. And in a nutshell, the home that's at 54 Flanders Road would be incorporated into the project. That home would be raised, and the new subdivision road would incorporate this as a fourth lot. So you would have still 3 new lots and a new house, that would replace the existing house at 54 to become part of the subdivision. You would still only have 2 lots on sewer, the one connection at 48 Flanders, as well as the one from 54 to become part of, actually, it's 50, isn't it? It's not 54, it's 50. I'm sorry, I misspoke. At 50 Flanders Road, those 2 would be on sewer and 2 would be on septic. So that's kind of a summary. The applicant also requested 3 waivers, which I have cited in the decision, and those waivers are justified to make a better project. And I've noted in the subdivision approval that this lot is less than 10 acres, so it doesn't qualify for an open space community unless the applicant chooses to do an open space community, and it's their choice to do a conventional subdivision. So that said, if there's any comments from Barry, otherwise we can proceed to look at the draft decision.
Barry, anything?
I do not have any further comment.
You've had a chance to review this? I know it came kind of late.
I find it acceptable.
All right, Jim, do you want to take us through the?
Sure, thank you. So you have in front of you a decision dated March 21, 2023 for the approval of a preliminary conventional subdivision for 48 Flanders Road. The first page cites the plan that was submitted, and as you know, there's no reference to a public hearing because a preliminary plan doesn't require a public hearing. So there's no notice to abutters or anything like that. That's why it's not cited. On the first page, I've noted that the plan is a 6-sheet plan. I've also noted the application. Over on the second page, I've noted all materials that were submitted with the application, as well as responses from WDA Design Group to comments from the town, as well as letters requesting further review, which are listed as 1-3, 113, and 2-2, 2023. And I see a typo right now at the end of 2-2-23.
Yeah, I saw a typo on the existing site, first paragraph. You have 110, second sentence, 5-acre parcel with 110 feet of frontage that is planned to be subdivided into 3, and then parentheses 4. Is the 6.85 acres include 50?
Where are you, Mark? I'm sorry.
Okay,
After existing site, third line down.
Oh, okay.
Second page.
Yeah. So is the 6.5 acres include
Yep.
50
I see it, yep.
Flanders? Barry?
No, the 6.5 acres is the original plan.
Okay, so that would be planned to be subdivided into 3, so the parentheses should just be 3?
It should be subdivided into 4 building lots because the size of the site now has been adjusted to include the majority of 50 Flanders Road, a portion of it will be transferred to the abutter. So Barry, if you could provide me the calculation of the acreage, that would be good.
So I'm confused. The 6.5 acres includes some
3
of
lots.
50?
Yes, only some. It cuts off the
Really, we're
frontage.
talking about a 4-lot subdivision.
Correct.
And what's the total acreage?
That's what I'm asking Barry to recalculate.
Okay, so it's not going to be 6.5 acres? It's going to be more than that? Or is it?
It will be more.
I'm all confused.
It will be more, but there'll be no new frontage created because,
Oh, I got that, yeah.
okay. I have a copy of the plan if you want to look at it.
Yeah, before that, in the previous, the 4-lot, the description of the plan, there's a typo, one existing house to be raised.
Off there.
Should be R-A-Z-E-D, not, so, the first paragraph under description of plan. You're not going to.
Yes, it
You're not
should
going
be
to
Z.
lift it up above the ground.
It should be raised.
Oh, raised, R-A-Z-E-D, right?
Yep, it is a Z. It's funny, I was thinking that as I typed it, and then I
No,
typed an S.
believe me, without,
Yep, the
right.
description's
I don't
correct,
mean
other
to be
than that
nitpicky.
spelling typo. And then we'll need a new acreage calculation.
and then you'll need to say, the 110 feet front of it is planned to be subdivided into 4 building lots.
Yeah, I said 3, but I have 4 in parentheses.
Yeah, no, I see that, I just want it to be consistent. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So in the next paragraph, I noted that 50 Flanders Road will be incorporated into the new subdivision plan. The house will be demolished, and that there'll be a net gain of 3 lots in the 3 new homes because you're adding 1 from 50 Flanders Road. I also noted that there's a 12-foot wide trail easement. That was part of the application, and that will remain in place. Then there's a discussion of the topography and the height of the land. Over on page 3, we talk about the pavement width of the roadway to be approximately 24 feet, as opposed to the minimum requirement of 28 feet. We would be allowing them to go down to 24 feet because this is going to be a private road. It won't need to be maintained by the town. Then over on again on page 3, the 3rd paragraph, it says the site doesn't contain any wetland, which is,
Jim, before that, can we go back to the sewer connection? Can we just reword that a little bit? I find it confusing with this, since the primary project site was a single, are you following me? Was a single lot, is assumed that, can't we just say that since the site already had 2 connections, the remaining 2 new lots will be, I feel like that is, when you talk about the additional lot at 50 Flanders Road, it's really not an additional lot, it's just, it's all one,
It is a separate lot.
it
there
is
could-
now, but
There
it's all.
could have been a separate, single-family house developed
You're
on
using
that
some of that,
property.
you're using some of that land for the,
But per the bylaw, and when you design sewers, each individual lot is allotted a sewer connection. So 50 had its sewer connection, 52.
And I get that.
And 48, that property behind that was
right,
empty.
I'm not looking to take away a sewer connection, Barry, I'm just don't, I feel like you're saying it, it's, since you originally had 2 sewer connections, you're entitled to 2 sewer connections, and you know, we can leave the language.
But it's not
there.
2 sewer connections, it's a separate single sewer connection for a single lot.
Currently, you have 48 Flanders with 1 sewer connection, 50 Flanders with 1 sewer connection. That's 2 existing connections that you're still entitled to.
Correct.
I completely understand that. I just don't necessarily like the way it's worded in this paragraph. But I can live with it, let's move on.
Jim, unfortunately, when this is copied, we only get every other page, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, so I don't have the other page.
you got a 2-sided, don't you have a 2-sided?
We didn't get a second side.
Take my copy.
Mine's 2-sided.
What? Mine is
I
1
have
second,
page 3 there.
and it goes to 5.
Well, it's a good thing I have it on.
So,
You want me to put it up on this, no, all right, let's,
that's right, we can listen, but I just said you're not going to get many comments, because I can't see it.
Well, let me ask, Kristen, do you have a copy, right? Let Hazel borrow it if it's correct. I don't know how one copy came out with one-sided, that's very odd. Yours is also?
yeah, I
Mine
have
mine's
the
two-sided.
copy on the screen, but mine is the same.
Okay, well, that's no good. If you would indulge me, I'll run back to the office and rerun it.
No, it's fine.
That's okay.
I can put it on the screen if you want. Maybe.
I can if you want.
Sorry.
No, let's move on, Jim. I think we're good.
Yeah, keep going on.
This is just a preliminary. We're gonna go
Yeah.
through it all in the definitive anyway.
Yeah. And I know that some of this is a bit awkward, but it's awkward because when we got the first plan, it was for a 3-lot subdivision on a vacant lot. And now we've added a house. So in order to explain that, it may not sound like you're describing the typical subdivision, but I think it's necessary to note that an additional lot was added to the property that wasn't part of the original plan.
I understand that, and I don't disagree with that, so go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead, Jim.
Then I described the actual project that's being approved, a 600-foot cul-de-sac, 4 lots on the cul-de-sac, 2 homes to be serviced by sewer, 2 homes to be serviced by on-site septic. The road will be designed as a private street. The right-of-way will be 50 feet, but the paved surface will only be 24 feet wide. The cul-de-sac will have the required 120-foot diameter bulb and the roadway inside diameter at 100 feet. So that does meet our subdivision rules and regs. Sidewalk is proposed on the southerly side of the road. That's all that our regulations require. They only require sidewalk on one side of the street. The drainage will be reviewed under the town's subdivision rules and regs. So they'll have the DEP stormwater guidelines to be met during the definitive plan phase. Then I went to waivers. So you don't have page 4, is that correct? You do not have page 4? Electronically. Okay, so then I will talk about the waivers on page 4. The first waiver is the roadway centerline grading greater than 6%. The Town of Westborough subdivision rules and regulations, section Roman numeral 4B1C, conventional subdivision design standards for
Hey,
streets.
Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just went back to the plan. You say in your proposed project description that 2 homes will be serviced off the roadway. Does that mean Flanders Road?
No, off the subdivision roadway.
And 2 homes will be served off the cul-de-sac circle? So, okay, so all 4 will be coming out
On the road, but 2 of them are along the expanse of the road and 2 on the
Okay,
cul-de-sac
I
road.
just misunderstood that. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
That section of the rules and regs state that you cannot exceed 1%, the road can't be flatter than 1% or exceed 6% along the roadway. The maximum grade within 100 feet of an intersection shall be 2%. That's what our rules and regs call for. The board would grant a waiver to allow the new subdivision's proposed maximum roadway grade of 7% for the access road to the new 4 lots. The grade waiver provides better transition grades for the existing elevation at Flanders Road intersection to the proposed final grade at the cul-de-sac. This will reduce the required excavation to transition the properties identified as lots C1 and C2 in the preliminary plans. This request will allow less excavation and soil removal due to the required roadway design. That's supposed to be cul-de-sac. Road design SAG and vertical curve requirements, the minimum level area prior to the intersection and the length of the proposed roadway to exceed the town's maximum grade of 6%, approximately less than 2% of the overall road length. So we have a maximum grade on our subdivision road, and that maximum grade in the standards is 6%, with a 2% leveling area within 100% of an intersection. And what is proposed here is to allow the grade to be 7% for a very short distance along the road, only 2% of the road's length. And public safety would not be compromised by the granting of that waiver.
Do we have any say over I mean, there's one driveway there that looks like it's really going to be difficult. The first one on the left coming in there. Does the town have any say about driveways?
Well, during the definitive,
We, during the definitive, we could work that out. I mean, Barry and I have already discussed that. I know he discussed it with Lisa.
Okay.
That design could be reconfigured. The reason for the design as it is currently is to make sure that you have no greater than 2% within 100 feet of the road. So as the driveway transitions to the new subdivision roadway, that slope can be no greater than 2%. That's why you have this odd configuration. It doesn't mean that we can't work yet another one during the definitive plan. The same holds true for the driveway as it approaches the landing area for the garage, because we don't want a steep driveway so the car slides out or slides into the garage. So waiver number 2 is the paved roadway width less than 28 feet. Right now, our regulations require that the minimum is 28 feet. So section Roman numeral 4B1B for conventional subdivision design standards for street width, the minimum width of pavement in all proposed streets shall be 28 feet, and or the width of a two-way paved residential street shall be 28 feet for a minor or collector street,
Jim,
which is...
you need to take out the word 30. You say the minimum width of pavement in all proposed streets shall be 30, and then parentheses, you have 28.
Oh, yes, thank you. The board would grant a waiver to allow a roadway pavement width of 24 feet for the access roadway for the new 4 lots. The roadway width waiver would reduce the volume of excavation and reduce the quantity of additional impervious surface. Since the intention of this project is to maintain the roadway as private and the relatively short dead-end roadway, the necessity to build the road to 28 feet wide is unwarranted. The proposed roadway shall not be built as a through street in the future. The reduction in the impervious surface will result in less stormwater runoff and reduce impacts at the proposed cul-de-sac crossing of Flanders Road. The proposed reduced paved width will support safe operation of the town's fire equipment, the maneuvering of fire apparatus while maintaining adequate clearance for two-way traffic. Public safety will not be compromised by the granting of this waiver.
Do we ever put language in that it's going to be maintained as a private road?
yeah, that would probably be in the conditions, though.
Oh,
And I was
okay.
going to bring
In
that
other
up
words,
later.
yeah, the town, in other words, it will never be offered to the town based on this.
Yeah, we would say in the definitive approval
Okay.
that the roadway will remain private in perpetuity,
Fine.
not maintained by the town.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions on number 2?
Not on number 2, no.
Okay, number 3, off-grading, 3-to-1 slope. The town Westborough subdivision rules and regulations, section Roman numeral 4B, conventional subdivision design standards, typical roadway section detail. The typical off-grading is 3-to-1 horizontal to vertical elevation. The board grants a waiver to allow an increase to the off-street grading to a 2-to-1 horizontal to vertical section from the right-of-way limits. In other words, the side slope will be 2-to-1. This proposed off-grading will reduce the volume of excavated material and reduce the amount of soil necessary to be removed. This will also reduce the amount of impact to the existing parcel, as it will allow proper grading into the existing topography, much easier with fewer retaining walls. Public safety will not be compromised by the granting of this waiver. So it makes the side slope steeper, but the actual grading itself will be less, and you'll need fewer retaining walls.
Are we going to need a number of retaining walls on this?
Still, yes. Okay, so moving on to page 6. This is a finding section. The property, now I need to adjust the acreage here. So Barry will need to give me a new calculation there.
Is it going to be over 10 acres, Barry?
No.
No.
Go ahead.
300 acres, there's no more than that.
So in conformance with section 4300 of the Westborough zoning bylaw, since the property is less than 10 acres, the applicant may choose, if it wishes, to propose a conventional residential subdivision or an open space community. The applicant has chosen to develop a conventional subdivision with lot sizes at a minimum of 50,000 square feet in area in conformance with the Westborough zoning bylaws and the rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Westborough. The conditions of approval. For the purposes of protecting the safety and welfare of the residents and to preserve the rural and suburban character of the town of Westborough, the planning board grants an approval subject to the following conditions. Number one, the zoning bylaws and the subdivision rules and regulations shall govern this subdivision and constitute the administrative requirements and design standards unless specifically waived by the Westborough Planning Board. All comments from town boards and commissions, as noted below, shall be addressed to the planning board's satisfaction in definitive plan construction documents by the applicant and the developer prior to the planning board's endorsement of the plan documents. Number two, specific design elements included but not limited to street layout, sewer, water, drainage, and other design details of the proposed conventional subdivision will be determined during the forthcoming definitive plan approval. Number three, the applicant shall assume all access and utility easements with the associated purposes and restrictions are identified on the definitive plans and are acceptable to the planning board. Number four, the planning board reserves the right to hire outside, there should be consultants there. There's a word missing. During the definitive plan review process, a deposit account shall be set up with the town accountant as an escrow account with funds usable by the town to pay these costs. Buildable lots. The total maximum number of buildable lots shall not exceed 4. This number shall be placed upon the definitive plan cover sheet. Traffic and roadway. These two are both boilerplate. They simply state that the planning board with appropriate easement language where necessary to the subdivision roadway and any easements which serve the roadway. So the developer has to grant the town any easements necessary to maintain any utilities, fix any drainage. This would also include any easements for any private or public purpose, like a trail. So if there's going to be a trail connecting to the abutting subdivision at Prentice Forest, that would need to be shown on the plans.
Is this where we would add a condition that the remote road remain private? And that they create a maintenance agreement amongst the new lots, that kind of thing, an HOA, or is that something we would deal with in the definitive?
It will be in the definitive plan.
Okay.
Yeah, it will
I
be
don't
in the
necessarily
definitive
have to
plan.
add it now, but
I don't think you need to add it now.
only because somebody else is maybe going to do the definitive plan, and I want to make sure they understand what to put in. If we add it here, then they'll know to add it later.
So I can add a number 3.
There's something about it'll remain private, there'll be a maintenance and HOA, maintenance
Since-
agreement and HOA to cover the cost of maintenance.
I'm going to say, since the project roadway shall remain private, the developer shall create an HOA to maintain
To ensure
the road,
maintenance.
drainage, and utilities.
Okay, something like that. I just want to make sure that your assessor understands what to
Okay.
put in here.
I'm writing, give me a minute to write it right now so I don't forget that.
And I know we'll all be there to ensure that it's done right, but
So if we want to modify this language in any way, we can do so with the definitive.
I'm sorry, say again, Hazel.
If we want to modify this in any way, we can do it with the definitive plan.
Yeah, this is not a final approval. This is
That's what I thought.
basically a little more than a conceptual approval.
Okay, fine.
So Barry, I don't know if we're going to end up making this a condition. I was going to bring it up with Jim, but he's drafting that. I would like, we mentioned specific abutters in this on Hundreds Road and Flanders Road. I would like you to reach out to them directly or, to find out what kind of natural screening or, privacy measures you can take to placate their, I don't know what the word is, but you understand what I'm trying to get at. I don't want to have to hash it all out, and
Well,
we've had other
during the
subdivisions.
definitive plan submission, will there not have, or one of the other, Concom at least, will have to file abutters lists and so forth?
Sure.
So they will all get notified for that?
Sure.
And through that, I would think we could put, please let us know.
I guess I don't want that whole negotiation to get in the way of moving that definitive plan along, and if you could get ahead of
Agree.
that, I would
Yep.
like that. I also have had circumstances where that didn't get built into the definitive plan, and Jim and I spent months trying to satisfy neighbors' desires, and, a developer actually did the best he could with that. And so I don't really want that to get into that again. I'd like to get ahead of it, so I don't know. I don't know if that's a condition necessarily, Jim. Were you able to listen to that at all?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear
No,
that.
I asked Barry to, and again, I don't know if it's a condition of the preliminary, but I'd like Barry to reach out to at least specifically those owners you mentioned.
In the-
was that
yeah,
on
in the
Hundreds
narrative.
Road and Flanders, and discuss privacy mitigation or whatever measures.
No
we
cut,
can
no
take.
cut zone.
'Cause I think we went away from a no-cut zone. It might even be the case where they want some plantings on their property so they can maintain them, or a fence on their property so again, I don't know what will get worked out. I just don't want to get into that whole negotiation at a public hearing if you can get ahead of it and agree upon some mitigation and build it right into your plan so we can move that process along. But, certainly they are going to be notified and have an opportunity regardless to come in and talk about what their needs are. Okay,
Let me read the new number 3 to you.
okay.
Since the project roadway shall remain private with no town's maintenance provided, the applicant shall create an HOA to maintain the roadway, drainage, and associated utilities.
Great.
Okay, next is environmental assessment. The draft environmental assessment is acceptable in discussing the relative subject matter and shall be modified with the definitive plan submitted to include more detailed information if deemed necessary by the planning board. Specifically, updated projection of school-age population shall be provided for the board and the school department's review. Conservation Commission, the developer shall file a notice of intent if necessary, and I say if necessary because I don't believe there are any wetlands on this site. You don't have any wetlands, you need to file a notice of intent, correct?
Right.
Yeah. I put this in here, it's boilerplate. I don't think anything's going to come up. I said if necessary. Erosion and sediment control, this is boilerplate. The wetland resource areas on the site shall be protected. An erosion and sedimentation control program, including best management practices, shall be presented with the definitive subdivision plan and shall be approved by the planning board. If the board deems necessary, all drainage calculation and erosion control shall be submitted to the board's designated consultant for review and recommendations prior to the board's approval. I rely on the town engineer for that. If she wishes it to be sent to Ty and Bond, then we'll do so during the definitive plan. Stormwater basin, the subdivision detention areas shall be designed according to the town of Westborough specifications. They shall include a detention basin maintenance plan and be approved by the planning board. If the board deems necessary, the proposed design and maintenance shall be submitted to the board's designated consultant for review and recommendations prior to the board's approval. Same as above.
What about maintenance on those?
So it's going to be a private basin, so it'll be maintained by the HOA. And that, what I added in that previous condition, I said all utilities, and I mentioned
Okay, so that
drainage.
includes stormwater.
Yeah, and I mentioned drainage specifically.
Okay,
in there.
thank you.
The applicant shall work with the town engineer to design sewer access for the 2 lots to be served by municipal sewer. The sewer connection route and specification shall be determined to the satisfaction of the town engineer and the Department of Public Works manager during the definitive plan review. Septic, 2 lots served by private septic shall have the proposed systems reviewed and approved by the Westborough Board of Health. Water, all lots shall be served by town water. Street lights, and this is boilerplate, this street light shall be installed at the intersection, the subdivision roadway intersection with Flanders Road. This street light shall be purchased and installed by the developer. Individual lamp posts shall be installed along the house driveways at the front edge of each lot, consistent with the subdivision rules and regulations. Mailboxes, subdivision mailbox and placement shall be located and approved by the planning board during definitive plan review process. Group mailbox and placement shall include proper lighting to ensure public safety. Emergency vehicle and public access, the definitive plan shall prove adequate accommodation for fire apparatus on the subdivision road. A swept path analysis shall be conducted by the applicant and approved by the Westborough Fire Department. A fire hydrant shall be placed in the roadway cul-de-sac. An additional hydrant shall be placed along the roadway. Hydrants shall be no further than 500 feet apart. And then the next has to do with preservation of existing features, and without reading these 2 paragraphs, it basically says that they have to identify stone walls, wetlands, any rock outcroppings or significant points of interest in natural habitat to be witnessed by the planning board or their representative in the field to determine if they're worthy of keeping. There are several stone walls on this property that were shown on the preliminary plan. I would say that the board should go out and decide whether or not you want to keep them.
I'm wondering if that's the point where we could ask the neighbors if they want to chime in on that, or, and we can wait till the public, the
Yeah, but I
definitive
don't
plan.
think you usually put it in this kind of a,
Okay, again, I'm not making it a condition, I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if that, when we do that site walk, we should consider asking the neighbors if they want to join in. And we'll figure out who's going to do that site walk. Do you want to decide that now?
Yeah. Well, so Barry is required under the subdivision rules and regs to stake the center line of the road at 100-foot intervals. When that road is staked is the appropriate time. He'll also stake the back of the cul-de-sac and the corners or the transition points of the cul-de-sac as they return to the road. That would be the time that you go out and take a look.
Okay, so we could go out individually, or do you want a designated
You can do 2 at a
representative?
time, or you can post a meeting and everybody go.
and don't forget the lots on Flanders Road that are affected.
Yeah, they're listed in the first paragraph. All right, so do you need individual votes on the waivers, or because this is preliminary, we could just do it all in one?
You can
vote?
do them all at once. You didn't seem to have any question with them.
No, I think the waivers are fine. As long as it's a private roadway and they're on sprinklers. Do we need to make that a condition that they're on sprinklers? Okay.
That'll be in the definitive plan. If my successor follows my boilerplate, sprinklers are discussed in the decision.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on this? It's not a public hearing, so do we have a motion?
You have a motion, it's written.
I move that the planning board approve the preliminary subdivision plan for a residential subdivision at 48 Flanders Road as written in the board's decision dated March 21st, 2023, with revisions made this evening.
Second,
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? That's 5-0 in favor of approving that.
We have a clean signature page. Let's get you to sign it now so that we can make the edits tomorrow and clerk it.
Okay, I have a clean signature page here, I think. Well, maybe I don't.
Thank you,
All
Lisa.
right, let's, while we're distributing that, Kristen, you have one?
What?
Do you have a clean signature page? Because I don't have it in mine. Anybody have a,
Just little changes, right?
Yeah, just like,
Yeah, so I
we
think,
can sign it now, and if it does change, we'll still have to come in, so. Let's try and sign it now. Barry, thanks a lot. Oh, here we go. We got it
I've got
here.
one here.
Oh, well, all right, we,
Okay.
there was a copy that was single-paged, single-sided, and
well, I have this one here, and Hazel's signing
Here
one.
it
so-
comes.
All right,
Everything else get double-sided. It's all right.
Silver Hollow Estates possible lot releases bond reduction, are we doing that?
no, they are not ready because town council needs to send me an approval.
Okay, so
And
we'll
they
skip-
did reach out to me, so
We'll skip that one.
Out of curiosity, do we get, by any chance, do we get the amounts that are left on this, or are we just required to always just get?
I'm sorry, Hazel.
I was looking at this list of, I was
He's got it.
thinking about bonds that still are left there.
When we get there, I'm happy to address that.
What?
When we get there, I'm happy to address that.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
so
Sorry.
we're going to skip over Silver Hollow. I'd also like to skip over the discussion and vote to support Article 16 Hockomock Pond property access. The committee's actually having another meeting tomorrow. Yeah, we have some new information from another engineer, so we reached out to some other engineers just to do due diligence on it, and got some new information that we want to discuss with the committee. So that may affect this article, and whether it even goes forward. So I don't necessarily want to discuss it now because I want to see how the committee moves forward. And we can take a vote on Saturday if we have to, but at this point, I think it's best if we just move on to the next agenda item, which is return of unneeded project escrow funds for completed projects. And you all have a list of those. Jim, do you want to explain this?
Sure. 1 second, I'm just catching up.
Chairman, good with me?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Barry. Yeah.
Appreciate all the board's help. Jim, happy retirement.
Yeah,
Thank you for all your help.
You haven't got rid of me yet. I'm going to be on your tail about finishing this. Okay, thank you. All right, so you have in front of you a list dated 3/20/23, that's March 20th this year. This is a list of bonds that have been around for many years. As you can see, some of these go all the way back to 1997. We have in the past reached out to the applicant, and they either have not requested them or they've just ignored that we have them. However, the state law requires us to return these monies to the applicants. So you have about 15 here. I kind of, let me see, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 22, actually. And some of these are recent, like the 182 Turnpike Road, the 151 to 155 Oak Street, that was Spectrum. And there's some others that are more recent, but there are some that are quite old. The amounts I don't have, but all of these were under the purview of the planning board. The new collector treasurer wants to get these off the books.
Can
So-
I assume that some of these things, the work hasn't been completed on? I mean,
No, all of these are complete. Every one of these is complete.
Even Dennis Estates?
Yes, Danis Estates is no longer a subdivision, because Danis Estates is Silver Hollow Estates. And
That's Silver Hollow.
yeah, and when Danis Estates was proposed, it was proposed by Caruth Capital. And Caruth sold the land to Mr. Arnone, who bought it. And then Silver Hollow Estates Corporation was formed, and they purchased 2 more properties and increased the size of the land that was originally Danis Estates, which caused them to submit a brand-new plan.
Oh, okay.
So Danis Estates no longer exists.
So everything has been completed, is what you're saying, in every one of these bonds?
Every one of these. I sat with the town treasurer, and we went through every one of them.
Okay, so any other questions on this? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move that the board return unneeded project escrow funds for completed project as shown on the list entitled Closed Projects with a balance on file with treasurer as of 3/2/2023.
So we know that all of these have been completed, even things like 25 Research Drive?
Yes, because the money that you held was for the permit, not for construction.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be hard, I just don't want to, have this list there and then turn out that there are 3 items in here where they weren't.
Oh, no, we went through every single one of them. I mean, if you look here, so look at the very last one, 180 to 182 peer review. So that's the car dealership that we just
right.
approved a couple months ago. This is only specifically for the peer review. So this would be tie and bond money.
we couldn't use that money for anything else, even if they,
Right.
like, started the project
No, I
and
know,
didn't
but
finish.
I said, because we've got a list in front of us, so we make sure the list is accurate. Okay, that's fine.
We have a motion and a second. Did we get a second? No, I'll second it. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
That's 5-0 in favor of returning those funds. Last item is a formal discussion on town meeting zoning articles. Is there anything really to discuss, Jim, other than?
Yes, so if you look at the motion sheet, you'll notice that in our review a couple days ago, the staff did a final review of the warrant article. We found that there were a couple keystroke errors on 3 of the 75 items, and it's only one number in all 3 cases. So item 20, section 3.2E should be changed to section 3.1E. Item 64, section 7.5A to 7.6A. Item 65, change section 7.5B to, that's supposed to be 2, not top, to section 7.6B. And these were caught by us in a work session, but they're the error of the consultant. And I've already reached out to town moderator, and I sent the board my email that I sent to the town moderator. So what the
What
board,
about the glitch on one of the summaries?
that's all set, we fixed that. Yeah, I already fixed that.
Okay.
I will note it at town meeting, but so it will appear in the warrant incorrectly, but it will be noted by the town moderator.
Okay, all right.
So what you need to do is when you make your motion, and I will distribute the motions to the board probably tomorrow, and bring them in writing to the meeting. Whoever makes the motion on this article, and I'm going to recommend that it be John, because John worked on this with me, will note that these 3 items need to be changed. These are small, so it'll say, I move that the planning board, in this case, your motion is you move that the planning board support Article 3 as written in the warrant with the following revisions, and you will simply state those 3 revisions. And the town moderator has that.
Okay, so we'll get the motions.
You'll also get the report, which states when the public hearing was and where it was advertised.
So I hate to rush you guys.
Okay, all I've got is the minutes for February 7th.
Okay, anybody have any comments, questions, changes?
I need to have you act on this. I need to have you vote the
I'm sorry,
revision.
do we
Yeah,
have a
you've got to.
motion on the?
Yeah,
I move
because
that, I'll do it, I can do it. I move that the planning board support Article 33 as written in the warrant with the following revisions. Item 20, change section 3.2E to section 3.1E. Item 64, change section 7.5A to section 7.6A. Item 65, change section 7.5B to section 7.6B.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? No. All those in favor? That's 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted, so everybody's had a chance to read the February 7th meeting? Yes. Okay, any questions or changes?
No.
All right, I move that the minutes for February 7th, 2023 be approved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second from Peter. All those in favor? That's 5-0 in favor.
I have a question for the board. So you have a meeting next Wednesday night for interviews, is that correct?
We will know on, I'll know tomorrow,
Hasn't been
Thursday night.
Hasn't been posted yet.
Correct, that's why I'm asking. So you'll know when, I'm sorry.
Thursday night.
Okay, so can someone let us know? Because
Yep,
we need,
I'll let you
we
know
need to post
immediately.
probably Friday, no later than Monday morning.
Yes, no, you'll be informed within time.
That'll be for a meeting.
Yes, would have been, yeah, will be, all right. We're having our meeting at 4 o'clock on Thursday.
All
To
right.
make a decision is whether recommend any applicants for town planner to the planning board.
All right, well, I'm excited for that, but we will see you all Saturday. Oh, April, can, who can make a meeting on April break? And if we, because I cannot. I will be-
What is that?
That's the 18th, I believe.
Breaks.
We can,
I'll be able to. Pete's going to Disney again?
No, I would, no, what am I, no.
He's
I
going to
just
be
don't know if she
bankrupt.
has this plan to go up to New Hampshire. All right,
okay, so why don't we talk about this
on Saturday?
either Saturday or, could you put it on the, well, we don't need to put it on the agenda, but we'll talk about it Saturday, and if not, we can talk about it on the 4th. But we may have to push that back a week. I would love it if you guys push it back a week, because I'd like to be here, but we don't have to push it back, so.
Whatever works.
Okay, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Is that 5-0 or
Yeah, that's.
5-0?
I had a meeting until 10:45 last night.